The European Union hopes to encourage debate and change the thinking behind the death penalty in the Caribbean. A number of high-profile anti-capital punishment advocates are taking part in a two-day conference designed to stimulate a serious conversation about having the death penalty removed from legislation in the region. Here's our senior reporter, Roger Dwarika, who's there.
Any debate on the death penalty is always going to be controversial, especially when it comes to the Caribbean. This is, of course, the first time the European Union has decided to engage the region in what is essentially a conversation. But it's important to note here, the words coming out here aren't about pushing, but rather about creating a conversation.
I would like to introduce a gentleman who hails from Slovenia.
In the Caribbean region, as we have heard, the status of the capital punishment is not uniform. 11 countries have abolished death penalty. 14 have retained the death penalty in their legislation.
And that's the key point of this two-day high-level conference, whose main focus is essentially encouraging regional governments to remove the death penalty from the legislative books. At the conference, which began Monday, one key line seems to be emerging from the keynote speeches.
In our experience, death penalty has not proven to be a deterrent. Here in the Caribbean, many countries that retain the death penalty are the highest ones having crime rate.
Leela Ramdeen has been a long-time advocate for the abolishment of capital punishment legislation, both in Trinidad and Tobago and internationally.
Honourable Chief Justice Ivor Archie, he had said in the 2010 Open and Law term, he said, "I am yet to see any persuasive evidence that execution significantly reduced murder or crime rates generally." And this year, the Open and Law term, again he referred to that, referring to the dubious nature of hanging as a deterrent.
Lord Navneet Dwarika, who now sits in the UK Parliament's House of Lords, said the argument and correlation often used that the death penalty is a deterrent to serious crime has never been proven.
There is no evidence anywhere in the world which proves that by establishing death sentence you have reduced crime. That has never been the case. So that argument doesn't hold.
However, in Trinidad and Tobago, there have been efforts to reintroduce the conversation surrounding capital punishment.
And we know in 2011 the then administration brought in a bill to Parliament, laid it on the table, and it failed because the opposition didn't support it. They were going to categorize murder, but they were also going to nullify the effects of Pratt and Morgan. That is the only way to resume hanging, and I hope we never get to that point.
According to the participants here, it's hoped the European Union taking the lead on this particular and controversial conversation, that this particular conversation will be carried on across the region. But they're also aware that any such conversation is going to take time. That, whilst capital punishment judgments continue to be handed down. Roger Dwarika, C News, Georgetown, Guyana.